Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for June 26, 2018. Madam Clerk.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Cheryl Straub and Anna Lewis versus Calaveras County et al., Calaveras County Superior Court case number 18CV 43036.
Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 2, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Calaveras Cannabis Legal Defense Fund et al. Versus County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras County Superior Court case number 18CV 43043.
Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 3, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Mark Bolger and Rimrock Farms, Incorporated, versus County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras Superior Court case number 18CV 43299.
Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 4, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Aaron John Elliott et al. Versus County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras Superior Court case number 18CV 43311.
Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we will go to closed session. And hopefully we'll get through all these in an hour.
So, just
we
so
will?
you know, the only reason we had to list them all out that way was...
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the June 26th meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Can we all stand, if you can, and do the pledge? Supervisor Mills, will you please lead us? Let us begin.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, you wish to...
Report of closed session. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Cheryl Straub and Anna Lewis versus Calaveras County et al., Calaveras County Superior Court case number 18CV 43036. On a motion by Supervisor Clapp and a second by Supervisor Oliveira, the board voted unanimously to direct staff to defend the county in this case and directed staff to engage the firm of Remy, Moose, and Manley to continue to assist. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Calaveras Cannabis Legal Defense Fund et al. Versus County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras County Superior Court case number 18CV 43043. On a motion by Supervisor Clapp and a second by Supervisor Oliveira, the board voted unanimously to direct staff to defend the county in this case and directed staff to engage the firm of Remy, Moose, Manley to continue to assist. Item 3, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Mark Bolger and Rimrock Farms, Incorporated, versus County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras Superior Court case number 18CV 43299. On a motion by Supervisor Clapp and a second by Supervisor Oliveira, the board voted unanimously to direct staff to defend the county in this case and directed staff to engage the firm of Remy, Moose, and Manley to assist. Item 4, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Aaron John Elliott et al. Versus County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras Superior Court Case Number 18CV43311. On a motion by Supervisor Clapp and a second by Supervisor Oliveira, the board voted unanimously to direct staff to defend the county in this case and directed staff to engage the firm of Remy, Moose, and Manley to assist.
Moving on to announcements. Madam Clerk.
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public. The board will recess for lunch at 12 o'clock today until 2 o'clock to participate in elder abuse awareness activities in the gazebo area.
Are there any board announcements?
Mr. Chair, I have an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to publicly comment and commend our public safety services this weekend, especially in District 3. The recovery of a lost 14-year-old for over 48 hours was commendable and was successful in returning him back to his home healthy and safe. They did a very fine job. I was out there with them. And also on the event that happened on Sunday, our law enforcement involved in a very, very intense investigation. I believe they performed professionally, and I'd like to commend them. Thank you.
Any other board announcements? Supervisor Mills.
Just very quick, I think our OES services and everybody involved with the fire out in Diamond 20 was a great initial test of our coordinating of the various services within the state and the local agencies, and I think everybody performed admirably. The updates from the public out there did a great job, so kudos to everybody that was involved.
Any other board announcements? Any staff announcements?
Good morning, members of the board. Peter Maurer, Planning Director. I do have an announcement. I sent you an email on Friday, and this is really more for the public to indicate that the general plan draft EIR is available for public review. It's posted on our website. Go to the planning department under general plan, and then hover over that. Look for CEQA, and then the draft EIR will be available. We should be getting delivery of the hard copies and CDs today from the consultant. The official start period of the comment, period is this Friday when it's published in the newspaper. The comment period will be 45 days, which ends on August 13th. Excited to have that major milestone done, one step closer to a general plan. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it is my pleasure to introduce our new Animal Services Manager, Mr. Evans Jacobs. We brought him in from Texas. His family's in Modesto, and his first day was yesterday.
Welcome, Evan.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kristen Brinks, Health and Human Services Agency. Just wanted to invite the entire community today to join us outside during the lunchtime break, 12 to 2, to take part in the Elder and Dependent Abuse Awareness Month activities. We're going to be having local speakers. There's going to be a number of community booths out there, and this is a statewide campaign of which Calaveras County is in partnership with the Area Agency on Aging, and we'd just like to invite everybody to come learn a bit more about how we can protect those in our community. Thank you.
Good morning. Brian Moss, Assistant County Administrator.
there's been some interest in our roads and bridges programs within the last few weeks, and we decided to go ahead and put together the last quarter worth of roads and bridges works for the board, just so that they could review it. I also have copies here for the public as well. What I did is I went to GIS and actually had maps printed out along with the listing of the work that's been done in the various districts over the last quarter of the year. And what you'll notice in the narration part of this, which is actually transferred onto the maps as well, is we break out the weeks in April, then we move on to the May schedule, and then we move on to the June schedule as well. And it also discusses what is intended to be done in the CSA. So this list is probably a week old at this point. So with that said, what I would like to do is leave this information with the board. And I will also leave this information here on the podium so that if anybody is interested, they're more than welcome to go ahead and take a look at those things. Thank you.
Any other staff announcements? That's it? Madam Clerk, moving on to public comments.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. Please remember that 5 people in the aisle. Do not block the door, please. Thank you.
All right.
Good morning, Marty Crane. Years of monitoring this Board of Supervisors meetings since 2000, 2002, something like that. And so many other meetings because they are all interconnected, has to count for something. And so I just want to say that all those, I'm going to say this in notes, who proclaim to protect our tax dollars should be outraged, totally outraged. First I have to ask, so are the Measure C monies going to be used to fight these court battles? I'm just wondering. I've watched so many shell games in these chambers on film right in front of our eyes. Well, there are so many examples today. A couple come to mind, and I just had to pick one. A few months ago, Supervisor Mills wasted about 30 minutes of our time while he did his best to manipulate a board decision. He had no authority to unilaterally authorize a private citizen on a CSA committee to spend approximately $175 for printing, supposedly an urgent issue. He wanted the taxpayers to reimburse this man retroactively. Supervisor Garamendi, then joined by Supervisor Tofinelli, raised the concern of setting a bad precedent. Our Public Works Director and I believe the County Fiscal Officer also resisted. Mr. Mills persisted, finally stating that he would explain himself after the vote. The vote was, I believe, 4-1, not to reimburse the money. Mills' statement was, I already paid it. So sending little shockwaves through the room and I believe across the board. If he had had his way, the taxpayer would have paid the CSA member, who would then have reimbursed Mills. Just another shell game. The response from Super Oliveira was equally shocking and sad. I'm sorry, we've spoken about that. He stated something to the effect that, oh, well done. I'll shake your hand on that one. All this is appalling, including 2 supervisors offering to write personal checks to reimburse the CSA member. It's inappropriate, again, sweeping fraud and illegal behavior under the rug. The charming husband joined me at the Women's March with his sign that said, honest federal government, where is it? I want to know, honest local government, where is it? Every taxpayer should be appalled, rise up and demand that all instances of fraud and abuse be addressed on behalf of the taxpayer.
Thank you, Marty.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Today I'm going to report some fake news inspired by some recent events that really pissed me off. That adulterous whoremonger, Donald Trump, and his arrogant elitist wife, Melania, have both contracted syphilis, gonorrhea, and herpes. I really don't care, do you? That greedy snob Donald Trump and his self-serving adult children, Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka, have lost their fortunes and have been convicted and are serving time for being corrupt crooks. I really don't care, do you? That lying hypocrite Donald Trump and his goofy youngest son, Barron, are both suffering from brain cancer, glioblastoma multiforme, and each have less than 6 months to live. I really don't care, do you? That racist bigot Donald Trump and his butt buddies, Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, have been blown up and killed in a nuclear explosion. I really don't care, do you? That embarrassing egomaniac Donald Trump and his America, which will never be great again probably, and the judgmental, self-righteous stooges who support him are all going to hell in a handbasket. I really don't care, do you?
Bonnie?
That's,
Can
yes?
I interrupt you? Can you stop for a moment? Your comments have to be within the realm of what the board.
I want you guys to take a stand.
Okay. But your comments have to be within what the board, the realm of our ability.
If you could write a resolution protesting all these things, I would appreciate it. That's my point,
All right.
okay?
All right.
The sexist, misogynist Donald Trump has a #1 critic and enemy, Bonnie Newman, who will probably die of colorectal cancer or lockjaw. I really don't care, do you? Am I telling the truth? Am I lying? It's 50-50. The adjectives all apply, the actions maybe not. Why am I saying such ugly things? I'm just taking my cue from the lying hypocrite, racist bigot, sexist misogynist, hateful, insulting, adulterous whoremonger, and shameful buffoon-in-chief in the White House himself, Donald Trump. I really don't care, do you? But if you care, you'll make a resolution opposing everything that Donald Trump is trying to do. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jessica. I'm from District 1, Jessica Clofine. I'd like to read something from Bill McMantis, June 23rd, 2018, Band Committee Update. The battle for the heart and soul of Calaveras County will begin on Tuesday, June 26th, the Board of Supervisor Chambers. Job number 1 is getting the band ordinance on the November ballot so we don't have to continue this battle. The game plan is to get at least 10 people to participate in the initial public comments. This will preclude the pot criminals from using time to try to intimidate and insult our board members. You can also approach the podium and not say a word for your 3 minutes. Once staff is directed to place the band ordinance on the ballot for voter approval, our emphasis will shift to the elections in November. We will need to raise funds to support the band, prevent Marietta Calloway and Ben Stopper from gaining a seat on the board. The band committee is committed to using every means possible to achieve this goal. The committee will be supporting, aiding, and working with Mike Oliveira, Clyde Clapp, and Dennis Mills if he will be involved in a recall. Gary Tofanelli backed up on us and once again has proven himself unreliable. Gary Stevens will be needed in our help as well. We will not waste time trying to rehabilitate reluctant candidates. The lineup is pretty well set, and we will go with our starters. This is insulting, and I hope that some of you feel the same way. I am not a criminal, and I do not feel that my industry has been acknowledged or reached out towards. Only discredited and not even recognized. This regulation did not differentiate the regulated cultivators and the illegals who never signed up. All of the farmers, all of the cultivators who signed up in this and participated in all of the regulations did not make a profit. In a business, you pay your taxes and you pay your expenses. And sometimes in most businesses, it can take 3 years for a new startup business in a small town to make a profit. And do you know who made a profit during this regulation? Everyone who didn't register and all the illegals who either were apparently known about and were never sent a bill. So all of the small businesses, the people who deserved, and this county should encourage and support small business. Calaveras open for business. What about all the businesses that tried to participate, paid taxes, and then were told we're not good enough and we're not worth enough? This is political suicide. This is trying to gear cannabis as the #1 issue in this county, and it is not. If you're trying to put the right people, if you want to put people in place just to get rid of cannabis, that is wrong.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you.
Good day, Board. Sandy Mitra, District 2. I wanted to take a few moments to share my thoughts on an incident that occurred at approximately 6:47 p.m. on June 24th. The individual who was taken to Mark Twain and then ultimately airlifted to another hospital has spoken before this Board of Supervisors in the past. You know him. The details of the incident are not important. What is important to clarify, from my perspective, is this. Violent acts of this nature have not occurred since the pre-urgency ordinance incident near the corner of Railroad Flat and Doe Roads near Railroad Flat. What is important to know is this. The most critically injured individual was a registered cultivator, someone who, prior to the passage of a ban, would not have been so desperate as to be in that place at that time. What's important to understand is this. This is likely the first of many incidents of this nature. Product that was grown legally and could have been sold in a legal marketplace is now going to be sold in illegal ways. Product that could have provided Calaveras County with revenue is now going to cost them in resource time to fully investigate and prosecute this case. All expense, no revenue. How is that possibly smart? Alternatives were available that could have mitigated outcomes such as these. 3 board members chose to cut constituents and business owners off at the knees and pass a ban, which, as this incident proves, is unenforceable. I wonder now how those 3 individuals feel with blood on their hands. Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Please bear with me. I've never done this. I do have some flyers. There's 2 sets for each one of you. I am asking for the support of the board and the community. I work at Mark Twain Convalescent. I've been there 13 years. Some of you may have had loved ones there. We are fighting for fair wages as well as IHSS. We take care of your loved ones. I've had to go as far as supplementing and doing private care in and above to just pay for my daughter and me, and that's all that we have in my house. The rent is outrageous for what we're being paid in Calaveras County. We deserve more. On a daily basis, we get hit, bit, punched, urinated on, and other things. I give them the dignity because of their disease, and I expect Calaveras County to support SEIU Local 2015 and IHSS with giving us the dignity. We're still there because we love them. No matter what they do to me, I'm going to be there. But we can't do it and support our kids. I'm lucky enough to have a landlord that's understanding and has not raised my rent. But it's time for me to get a bigger place. Can't do it. Theoretically, when I work out my numbers, can't do it. We are going to blanket from Calaveras County to Tuolumne and Amador. We are in negotiations right now. They do not want us to have a raise. Even though minimum wage is going up, they don't want to give it to us. They don't want to give us anything in and above. For somebody who's been there for 13 years, I make $13. I've given them 13 years of working over, missing birthday parties, holidays with my family, missing opening Christmas gifts with my kids so I could be there. And all I ask is that each and every one of you and you gentlemen understand that when you start seeing these flyers, whether it be Sonora's, Kit Carson's, or Mark Twain's, please understand that we're doing this. We need to bring it to awareness in the county. We get patients from Sonora. We get patients from Amador. That's why it's going Tri-County. If you gentlemen can please step up and help us, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good morning, Justin Catalano, resident of West Point. I'd like to see on the agenda, we have a project in West Point. It's called the Pine Street West Point Bike Path. The funding type is bike and pedestrian. We are in the construction phase. The initial programmed year was 2009-2010 for $120,000. We have not moved forward with this project, and I'd like to see this project put on the agenda so that we can put out an RFP so that this project can be completed, and then we can essentially look into investing into some more bike and pedestrian projects, and the government will help us as soon as we complete this project. Thank you.
Was this with a COG project?
It is. It's in the CIP.
Okay, it's under CIP. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Good morning, Board. Bill Wilson, District 1. Accessory before the fact. 3 of you came in here with an agenda when you were elected, claimed you had a mandate from the public to be elected. You could have banned. You could have never allowed the second year of the UO to exist. But you did. Why did you do that? I think there's probably some 13 million reasons why you did that. You even extended it with a phony little attempt to, well, we're going to try regulation. I'm a leader, and we're going to try regulation. We're going to make it 100 acres to grow 500 feet or more of cannabis. Well, this weekend you saw what your actions, accessory before the fact, your ban, your allowance to allow people to grow legal cannabis in this community, to pay taxes, to have their property inspected, pay the water board for environmental possible damage. And you three sit here this morning probably having done a little happy dance that there was somebody killed and somebody else in a hospital. All because of your actions. The blood, gentlemen, is on your three hands. The blood that's on that tax money is the blood of the community that you've banned, you've ridiculed. You've told, we don't want you here, even with a conviction on your record for selling cannabis. You three disgust me, literally disgust me. Your actions should never have been allowed. You should all face charges for your actions, for your ban. All anybody wanted to do was sell their product legally. But you managed to squash that. Put them in a position, an untenable position. They had loans to pay, property to pay. Taxes, $88,000 in taxes. Now he's lying in a hospital after paying those taxes to you in this county. So you could fix Little John Road 2.5 years before it was even due. So we could have a bridge in District 1 that has holes in it. Nobody can even pass on it. We don't need roads repaired in D1. What the heck? Nobody cares about D1. D4, that's the important part. Copperopolis.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. As we go through these meetings with public comment and we try to get to the heart of some of our problems, it's really hard to do. First of all, this meeting was difficult to begin with, 46 items with the most important item at the very end. It's not a real good way to get people to show up and participate in government. It's a real hardship on a lot of people, but we're going to go ahead and do that. During the public comments, it was always my understanding that the comments were supposed to exist within the purview of what the board had authority to do. And even though the board doesn't take action on public comments, in the case of an emergency, you could. But it's supposed to be something you have something to do about or some control over. It's an insult to come here and listen to the mindless ramblings, insults, and others speak that, do you realize that this is going out on TV? There are families who watch these meetings. Some families use the video from these meetings in their homeschooling to teach civics. Do you want young children to listen to some of the things we've heard in this boardroom? It has nothing to do with the authority of the board. I'll leave it at that. That's up to the chairman. You've got to take control of the meeting. You've got the authority to do it. The rules are clear. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. Again, we hear how the application fees, save the county and everything else. With information we've been able to gather, we're finding out that not everyone in staff did their job, perhaps, that the $5,000 application fee was not enough to cover processing of those fees. When a Nexus study was actually completed, that the cost per application was closer to $11,000. That means that the citizens of Calaveras County pitched in $4 or $5 million to help pay for the application fees.
Sit down. Sit. Let him finish. Let him finish. I'm running this board meeting. Finish. Finish. Mr. Fry, will you remain quiet, please? Go ahead, Mr. McManus.
Thank you. I'll move off that onto the last topic that I bring up continuously, and that's the environmental registry. We've asked countless times. I don't even know. I'd have to go back and count, and I don't really care to go back and count. Getting information out to property owners in this county. All I can say is that the band committee is trying to get that information together to help our citizens so that they don't have to endanger themselves by trespassing on someone else's property to see what kind of dangerous materials might be there. I wish that you would release this registry to the public, or is there something you really, really, really want to hide? Thank you.
Point of order. First of all, something's not right here. I think, Gary, you need to investigate. What nexus study is Mr. Bill referring to? It's never been done or made public.
Okay, that was
So,
public.
so the point of order is that information is flowing to a select group of the public without it going out to everybody. Secondly, environmental registry, when was that agendized? When was that voted on by this board? Why is he speaking of it as if it exists? What is going on? You need to investigate this, sir.
Mr. Smith, that's not a point of order. We did not do anything procedural. That was a public comment. He has a right to public comment. Whatever he says, I can't.
And you have a requirement under the law to investigate things when they go wrong.
Procedure. We're going to take a 5-minute break right now. 5-minute break. 5-minute break. Okay, we are back. And I'm going to make a comment about points of order. Points of order have to do with the procedural malfunction that we do. It has nothing to do with what somebody is saying in public comments, whether you like it or not. You don't have the right to say point of order and make a comment about what somebody else is saying. We're all civil here. We need to act civil. Okay, there'll be no yelling out and screaming or talking about what somebody else is talking about while it's their time. They have their 3 minutes, and they will be given their 3 minutes, regardless whether you agree with them or not. So the point of order, standing up and screaming point of order because you disagree with what somebody's saying, is not a point of order. And if you stand up with a point of order, then you need to tell us in which part of the document that you're citing as a point of order. And then I will recognize you, and you will wait till I recognize you and call you up before you come forward with your point of order. So just standing there screaming point of order because you don't like what somebody's saying is not what's going to happen, okay? So we will have 10 more minutes we'll have 15 more minutes according to the clerk of public comment time. If you've already spoken, you do not get another shot at it. So we'll continue with public comments, and no more than 5 people up there. We were having 6 or 7 before. Sandy, you've already spoke.
I'd like to address the point of order, Supervisor Tofinelli, if I could. And the issue that I would like to bring forward is procedural. When it comes to references made to the Nexus study associated with the urgency ordinance, there has been a procedural issue. I put forth a formal Public Requests Act to see that Nexus study. I was told by Sarah Duquet that it was an internal work product, not available for public release. Yet, apparently, some people are being provided access to that information. So if it's not a point of order, then I think something needs to be clarified relative to how aspects of the Nexus study attached to the urgency ordinance is leaking.
Okay, and that was during a public comment period by somebody, so there was no procedural errors to these proceedings right now. So, but I will let County Council address what you have to say in your comment. However, it is not a point of order at this point because it was somebody, a public comment, making a comment, okay? That is not a procedural error.
All right.
Okay.
I appreciate the clarification.
And for clarification as it relates to the Nexus study, as you are correct in that you made a Public Records Act request for the document. The document is in administrative draft status, and it is so until the final draft is completed, that final draft will certainly be released to the public for review. As far as what Mr. McManus has stated during his public comment time, that was in reference to something that was actually said during a public meeting by one of the supervisors, that one of the supervisors had indicated something along the lines that the fee should have been much higher, around $11,000. It was not something that has been disclosed by staff to members of the public or disseminated in any way, shape, or form. I believe that Mr. McManus is using the information that he utilized or received during a public meeting during that time.
I haven't seen it. So, okay, thank you. We'll continue with public comments. We have 15 minutes. And again, let's respect each person that come up here, their 3 minutes.
Well, good morning. First, I'd like to correct something that was said that isn't completely correct. And that is the idea that this incident, this robbery that just took place was a result of the ban, and that this kind of activity didn't happen until the ban went in place. This is just not correct, because I happen to personally know an individual under the urgency ordinance who was tied up in his home, doused with lighter fluid, and threatened while they stole his cannabis and cash. So this activity has been going on, even under the urgency ordinance. A lot of this illegal activity escalated under the urgency ordinance because when it was passed, it went out nationally in High Times magazine that Calaveras County was the place to grow cannabis, and even suggested it's easy to get away with it here because we have a small police force. So that's why we've seen a lot of this increase in crime under the urgency ordinance and allowing cannabis in the county. One of the other things I'd like to say is in regards to the, sitting here and having to listen to all these personal attacks against supervisors, our county officials, seems to me a little unnecessary. People could come up and make their point without having to personally attack people, call them names. I hear not only in public comment, but I hear people behind me calling the supervisors names, and it's just unnecessary. The historical figure that I admire the most in my life said that it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, it's what comes out of him. When you're allowing these kind of things to come out of your mouth, the foul language, personal attacks, and without making your point, it just shows what kind of person you are, not the kind of person you're attacking. And I think that people need to keep that in mind and try to keep the rancor down, and just make your comment and present your case. The other thing that's unnecessary is the threats. And I know some of you have been threatened. I've been threatened in public forums. It was once suggested that I watch out and not get killed in the gunfire because of where I will go when that happens. It was also in a public forum that somebody suggested my wife and I be driven out of McCollamy Hill. This kind of stuff is unnecessary. Just because somebody disagrees with my opinion, and it's my opinion, and if they want to come to me and talk to me and find out why I have an opinion on cannabis that I have, I'd be more than happy to share it with them. My opinion is probably developed differently than most people because of my profession. But I have no problem with that. The other thing I'd like to say is that you need to take time to get to know these supervisors. You can have a really wrong impression of these individuals without talking to them and getting to know them. I know recently my wife and I met Michael Oliveira at a function. Never met him in public. Well, he's a really nice guy. Really enjoyed our conversation. In fact, my wife wasn't insulting you when she said that you look younger in person than you do in the board meetings. So.
Thank you, Trent.
But also, sometimes I'd like to get to know Jack as well.
Hi. I'm going to read the last part of my thing because I probably won't get to it. As auto and motorcycle accidents continue to multiply, no one checking on most of how or what is in the driver's systems, including dead drivers. Society continues to wear a blindfold to the daunting statistics that are swept under the rug by not testing and reporting. To pay for drug tests, even of the dead, is expensive, but not as expensive as an ignorant voting public. The pot operations that continue in our county are corrupting people. The workplace is now an acceptable place to be either coming off drugs or actually on drugs. Is it acceptable for an airplane pilot, an airport controller, or an airport mechanic. Is it acceptable for the principal of a school to be growing it on the school grounds? Is it acceptable for 12 houses, mostly in West Calaveras, that were stuffed with marijuana plants to be raided as a result of federal instigation, while untold numbers of houses and outbuildings are housing commercially grown marijuana in Calaveras County? The Sheriff's Department is, of course, not responsible for people's wells going dry or depletion of habitable housing because of pot contamination. They are not responsible for young people being lured into buying it and getting addicted or even paid with it so that they, in turn, can sell it to their classmates. They are not responsible for creating jobs that pay 2 to 3 times what a busser at a restaurant receives, however short-lived that job may be. They are not responsible for a parent or a grandparent or an uncle waiting for a child to come home and he or she doesn't because of drugs, whether related to an auto accident, a party turned bad, or a mentally shaky person's bad trip taking him or her over the edge. They are not responsible if someone removes a section corner to where they'd rather have it. They're not responsible if the county has more than one version of maps that do not jive, causing dissension between neighbors, untold distress because of these
Thank you.
Hello, Rick Beard, District 2. Campaign fundraising coordination. Supervisor Mills, Supervisor Tofinelli, Supervisor Clapp, District 3 candidate Ed Langen, and Gary Stevens have all run coordinated campaigns with support from Bill McManus and the band committee, and Vicki Reinke and Citizens Against Commercial Marijuana, as well as Jack Cox and the Communications Institute. There are emails, social media posts, and coordinated messaging that prove there is coordination regarding fundraising for the upcoming election cycle and that the band committee is spearheading this effort. On January 12, 2018, 2 days after the passage of the ban ordinance, Bill McManus wrote, 2, we must prepare for a robust campaign to support the ban, and when it appears on the ballot, the committee is not calling for contributions now, but when it is official that the battle will take place at the ballot box, we will need approximately $15,000 to $20,000 for signs, pamphlets, meeting hall expenses, printing expenses, etc. The millionaires on the pro-pot side will raise 20 to 30 times that amount to defeat us and fund legal challenges, hire transient voters, out-advertise us in the cannabis enterprise and other media outlets. We have learned through experience how to be very efficient with campaigns. 3, we must replace pro-pot elected officials. Additional funds will be necessary but those contributions should be made directly to the campaign committees for each individual. The committee will be actively engaging in several races and will report out to you the questions and answers brought up in the candidates' nights, debates, interviews, etc. We will also supply suggested questions you can ask at live debates through the emails to various candidates. It is time for all of us to hold their feet to the fire and get their firm and honest positions on a variety of issues facing the county. I would like to know if you'll be using today's vote for campaign funding for this agenda. I'd also like to bring to everybody's attention that it's all illegal now, and that any kind of activity up here is criminal, and you've opened the doors for anybody who wants to participate in that, unfortunately. Thank you. You look great today, glowing, and I like your tie.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I think my tie is better than Dennis's tie. I don't have a contribution on cannabis, but we had two interesting interviews on Taxpayer Alert. They'll be going up tonight to the media, and one of them is an interview with our CAO. We discussed some pretty important things, and we seem to learn more in that half hour than we've done over many hours of board meetings. The other one is an interview with a fellow that is suing the county of Tuolumne over the economic development presentation of information. Basically, the person's name is Ken Perkins, who was the guest. And that also is an interesting interview. And during the course of the interview, even though it's pending litigation, we came up with a solution to resolve it, maybe in a pretrial meeting, which is basically required that the economic development people provide sunshine on any past activity that they've done, and they can keep present negotiations secret. And that seemed to make sense. Anyway, with those two presentations, we seem to be getting better and better, and we're trying to provide solutions for tomorrow. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Raymond Smith. I'm from Valley Springs, District 1. I'd like to bring to the Board's attention, first of all, the medical privacy information for California. The Supreme Court has stated the authorization requirements found in Section Civil Code 5611 are detailed and demanding and reflect the legislature's intent in ensuring that medical information may be disclosed only for narrowly defined purposes for identifying parties in a limited period of time. This Medical Information Act has been extended through Prop 64 to extend to medical cannabis patients and any identifying information pertaining to them. We also have Kirby versus Fresno, which is a standing court precedence. The citation for that, the actual opinion for that, in Kirby, the plaintiff filed for declaratory relief in action asserting that the county ban possession, cultivation of marijuana was preempted by state law. The Kirby court concluded that a very narrow portion of the county's ordinance at issue was preempted. Specifically, the county's absolute ban on individual cultivation, punishable by a misdemeanor, was preempted by the portion of the Medical Marijuana Program Act, which protects qualified patients from valid medical marijuana identification cards. Now, this indicates that it is infraction, not a misdemeanor. The $1,000 fine for that is not supported by 8.06 in Calaveras County Code, which references further government codes for violations of county ordinances, which may be misdemeanors unless specifically made an infraction. And those start at $100. The next is $200, and incurring fine after that is $500. I'd further like to bring to the board's attention California Health and Safety Code 11362.4E, which states a person who violates the restrictions in subdivision A of section 11362.2 is guilty of an infraction punishable by no more than $250 fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I wish you all continued health and happiness. Have a good evening. I have to go to work today, so I won't be here. Thank you.
This will be our last speaker, Mike.
Michael Falvey, District 2. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Concerning the point of order, I'll direct this directly to the board chairman. Sir, you lectured us a few minutes ago. Just the last meeting, I had nothing I could do but stand up and yell point of order. As a person sat in this chamber and insulted people who were speaking in public comment simply because she disagreed with them. And she made comments for all of us to hear. Doesn't matter what side it was on or what it was about. She made public comments, and finally I'd had enough of it. And I stood up and said, point of order. You corrected me and said that wasn't procedural. You then proceeded to come up to me during the break and say what I did was wrong. And now today you lecture us and you say I'm in charge of this. I didn't see that 2 weeks ago. Yet I'm the one that got lectured while the person that sat out here in the audience made rude, crass comments. So, I'm asking you, what are my options as a concerned citizen to, ask that the meeting be kept control of, while one person can do what they want to do. And today I've seen it again, another speaker saying pretty outrageous things, I think, as an uneducated, concerned citizen, and yet you sit there and let that one citizen say something. So you're throwing me off here. I don't know, if I can't stand up and say point of order, and you're letting someone make rude comments, what are my options? Am I supposed to let them continue to make rude remarks? So I appreciate the fact that you're trying to take charge. I wish you'd do it consistently. And also, for the entire board, gentlemen, it's getting closer and closer to where I feel I have to go home and wash my hands. It's just getting out of line. And I've said it before, I believe I have. I don't remember my exact words, but your leadership, come on, you got to grab the bull by the horns. This latest thing of now we're having something come on the ballot in November. Number one, talk about flip-flopping. That's a massive flip-flop. Number two, it's last on the agenda. I don't know if it's why that is, but to me it would seem like you want to get that out and get it taken care of. I don't know if you're hoping for less public comment. It's going to be not seen by too many people, but number one, the fact that it's on, number 46 is on the agenda, is kind of weak, very weak.
Thank you. All right, that was the last public comment. Madam Clerk, we'll move on to consent agenda.
Consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Does any board member wish to pull an item? I will pull item number 15. Any staff member wish to pull an item? Seeing none, we'll ask if any member of the public would like to pull an item. Yes, Mr. Fry.
Number 11, please.
Number 11. Anyone else?
Number 11.
Okay, we have 11. Okay, seeing that's it, I'll look for a motion to accept the rest remaining items on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair. I'll make the motion.
I'll go ahead, Mr. Clyde. Supervisor.
I'll make the motion to approve the balance.
Okay.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
That was second by Supervisor Oliveira. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Mr. Fry, you pulled number 11. Oh, I'm sorry. He was. We're looking for the department head for this item. He was just here. We were trying to find him out here. We'll do 15 first, okay, and then we'll come back to 11. This item I pulled because it has to do with air quality control, the air pollution control district. And in order for us to, I don't know how it got on consent agenda, we had this discussion. It should have been on the regular agenda because we were going to have to convene as the
No.
Air Quality Control District Board to approve this item and then go back into a regular board. We still have to go as air.
Would you like me to read the item into the
Yeah, why
record?
don't you read the item because it's.
Item 15 is from the Air Pollution Control District to adopt revision of District Rule 513, source record keeping and emissions statement.
Brad?
All right. And good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Brad Banner, and I'm acting this morning in my role as Air Pollution Control Officer and addressing the Air Pollution Control Board of Directors. And I have with me Doug Carson, who's our Air Pollution Control Technician, as an additional resource in case questions come up that I can't answer. We are asking the board to approve the findings presented in the staff report and adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 513, source record keeping, hereafter titled Source Record Keeping and Emissions Statement. The proposed update is required by the State Air Resources Control Board and the Federal Environmental Protection Agency for any county that has a non-attainment area for ozone. As you know, we are in non-attainment for ozone, not because of ozone generated in Calaveras County, but because of ozone that drifts up from the San Joaquin Valley. So therefore, we are under this federal mandate to update Rule 513. It pertains to emissions from stationary sources. A typical stationary source that might be envisioned for the rule would be like power plant. All we have in Calaveras County are backup diesel generators, things like that. So we have a very low amount of emissions from our stationary sources. The current rule doesn't specify the sources of emissions or the type of emissions that need to be kept. The revised rule specifies that we're to report on the oxides of nitrogen and reactive organic compounds when the levels meet certain thresholds. The revised rule restates existing thresholds for reporting that are higher than any sources we have in our county. So it won't impact the county. Just as an aside, what we do is we have about 150 businesses that report to us on their throughput. And throughput is like the gallons of gasoline they use or the hours of operation. They report this annually, and then we have conversion tables that convert that to these emissions. And so, again, that would continue. So we're happy to answer any questions about this you might have.
Okay, at this time, though, I have to recess this as the regular Board of Supervisors for Calaveras County and convene us as the Air Pollution Control District Board. So now we can formally go forward with any questions the board may have. Supervisor Clapp, your light is on.
None.
Supervisor Garamendi.
So, just so I understand, these are regulations coming down from the state and the feds. There's nothing for us to debate. It's just the way it is. And I'm ready to make a motion when you are.
Okay, well, we have to open up the public comments. Are there any public comments on this item? It's more or less we're mandated to do it, so. All right, no public comments. I'll bring it back for a motion.
You have a motion, I'll do a second.
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi.
And a second.
Second by Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We will recess from the Air Pollution and Quality Control Board, and we will reconvene as Board of Supervisors. All right. And now, Madam Clerk, we will go to item number 11. Do you want to read it? Okay, we need to catch up here. Give her a minute. She has to type in the motions and the seconds. I did see Mr. Short in the back.
Item 11 is from Code Compliance to uphold administrative citation for Sandy Hankins in the property identified as APN 020-015-010, located at 5839 Old Emigrant Trail West, Mountain Ranch, California, authorizing abatement and a lien for administrative and abatement costs.
Mr. Fry, you pulled this item. You have a question? You want to come forward to the microphone, so.
Hopefully my last. I have a question about what is going on with this issue, item number 11. I would like to have an explanation of what is happening with this. Thank you.
Bonnie, you have a question?
I also have a question. I looked up abatement, and it says a reduction, termination of a suit, quashing of a nuisance. But I think abatement is really raising and leveling a property. And if that be the case, my question would be, why are they leveling the property? And is it because of junk? Is it because of non-functioning septic? Or just like George wanted to know, what is going on and why would someone lose their property and have it demolished?
Mr. Short, Courtney?
Good morning. We have the file here, and our code enforcement officer will report out on the questions here.
I'm Courtney Meinhardt. I'm code enforcement officer for Calaveras. This is a junk and debris case. Basically, I have had no contact with the property owner. I've attempted several contacts, left them messages, notes, everything. I've not heard anything. Most of the debris is off. At this point, it looks like just left their garbage. And that's what we're there to abate. Any questions?
Ready to make your motion.
Does that answer your question? No. It's not. Okay. Yes, Mr. Oliver.
Courtney, welcome. Mr. Short. You made every possible attempt to contact the owner of this property?
Several.
And these records were checked with the tax rolls on the legal owners and things of that sort?
Yes.
So if we have to abate this, will there be a lien placed on that property?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Just want to confirm it. Thank you.
Can you come up to the microphone, please? And that way everybody, the audience and at home can hear you.
Was there a registered mail sent with a return receipt?
When we send out our notices, we send them out regular mail, certified, and then we post them on the property. I have not received the certified back. The tracking says that it's still in the system somewhere, so it probably has not been picked up. But the notice is posted on the property and was, as of 2 weeks ago, still posted on the property. Since the time it was posted, they've had a toy hauler moved off, they've had an RV moved off, they've had a bunch of stuff moved off, they've left a Dodge truck, which appears not to be running, mattresses, some of the beautiful fencing that seems to go on in this area. And another trailer actually came back, and it looks like it's abandoned on the property, that someone just dumped it there.
Okay. So they were notified 3 ways: regular mail, certified mail, and posting on the property.
Correct.
Okay. Supervisor Garamendi?
I'd like to make a motion to accept.
I'd like a question first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Clapp.
Courtney, did you work with county council on this to make sure that we can receive this and we don't have a $182,000 to write off next year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sandy, you have a public comment on this?
If I could.
Yep.
It should be noted that I appeared before the Planning Commission pertaining to this APN on July 13th. And at that hearing, several concerns regarding the state of the property were raised by myself and other lot owners in El Rancho Loma Serena. The landowner supported their tenants using their burnt property to cultivate cannabis. More than a year had passed, and still the requirements of the urgency ordinance had not been met by the cultivator. And in fact, most of them were never met. Of greatest concern was the fact that cultivation, and this is probably of interest to Supervisor Mills, continued to occur after the lot was determined to be a Tier 3 slope by the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. The culverts in our HOA flow into the Jesus Maria Creek, which ultimately goes into the North Fork of the Calaveras River, and that ultimately affects hundreds of people in the county, as well as many more downstream in the Bay Area. At the Planning Commission, it was pointed out to the owner, that the owner of the property had been fined by the HOA for allowing commercial cultivation on their lot within a designated residential-only community. That violates our governing documents. Ms. Hankins, who is the owner, failed to render payment for the fines levied by the association, and the HOA has since placed a substantial lien against the property. It should also be noted that the appellant failed to appear at their hearing, and it was a hearing they requested. So lack of response by the landowner, as Mr. Short and Mr. Meinhardt have observed, appears to be pretty standard operating procedure. Details within the staff summary indicate, in addition to concerns about what may have gone into the water supply from farming activities, there's also concerns related to the lack of a permitted septic. For 2 years, people lived in motorhomes, trailers, mobile mini structures, full-time on that site. There were no porta potties. So where did all of their human waste go? After speaking at the July 2017 meeting, Supervisor Mills, you may recall, you approached me and asked to speak with the lot owners about this site. We met in the lobby right outside in this building, and you promised me that you would take action and ask for additional information from me. I provided that to you, yet nothing's happened, and you chose not to respond to my follow-up emails and phone calls. So now, some 12 months later, I'm asking that Supervisor Mills and the rest of the board, but primarily Supervisor Mills, make good on his failed promise and take part in approving funds to ensure some cleanup is done on this lot. I speak for other members who have left from the HOA. They would greatly appreciate it, and it will do a lot for us to eliminate the public nuisance and the visual blight.
Thank you. All right. I have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi. Do I have a second?
I can make that second. I'll second, Mr. Chair. I'll make a difference.
I think Supervisor Mills is first. So I have a second by Supervisor Mills. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Yeah, I remind everybody that we will be breaking for 2 hours at 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock this afternoon to join in the festivities outside.
Could we have a 5-minute break to allow the next presentation to get settled and set up?
We can take 5-minute break for the next presentation to set up. All right, we're back from break. Madam Clerk, item number 26.
No.
No?
Item number 35.
Excuse me, Mike.
It's from the Economic Development Division. Receive a presentation from Fairbank, Maslin, Mullen, Metz, and Associates Incorporated regarding the results of a public opinion survey for a potential transient occupancy tax increase.
Ms. Galino.
Good morning, Chair and Honorable Board. Kathy Galino with Economic Development. I'm here today with GFS, Lori Ranieri and Matt, as well as Richard Bernard from FM3, who provided the public opinion survey that I spoke about. And also I have handouts for the public. we'll set them here. And
While I have this minute, I want to remind everybody that we will be breaking at 12 till 2 o'clock. So if we can get through this item completely by 12.
So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Richard.
All right. Good morning. I want to thank the chair and the board and the staff for inviting me here to report on your voters' opinions about this issue. So I want to start with the research methodology. We conducted a dual mode survey, which means online and by telephone, that's landlines and cell phones, between June 6th and the 11th of this year. Surveys were conducted with a random sample of 1,040 voters registered in the county who are likely to vote in a November 2020 election. And we had a large enough sample that we were able to look at a subset of those folks who are likely to vote in a November 2018 general election, and that was 914. And actually, for most of this presentation, I will be focused on the November 2018 results. The margin of error for the likely November 2018 sample is plus or minus 4.4%. And there were certain questions we asked a random half the sample, and you'll see that in a moment. And the margin of error is then 6.2 because we're using a smaller sample size in which to ask the questions. I wanted to also point out at the bottom, you'll see if you're really quick on math and you notice something doesn't equal exactly 100%, I blame that entirely on rounding error. Okay, so we began the survey by trying to get perceptions of people in general in terms of the county. I want to point out that I did not ask about county government. I just asked about county in general in this question. We said, would you say things in Calaveras County are generally headed in the right direction, or do you feel things are pretty seriously off on the wrong track? 56% said wrong track, 28% said right direction, and 16% volunteered they didn't know enough to offer an opinion. Comparatively to other counties, the wrong track is quite high. It's clear that there are concerns about the direction. At this particular question, it's hard to know exactly why, because it's just a general question, but it's something to keep in mind. We then started moving into the ballot issue part of the survey. But I first wanted to ask a conceptual question about whether people in general think there's a need for additional funds for local county services. And I gave them the option of great need, some need, a little need, or no real need. And some folks offered that they didn't know enough to offer an opinion, so that would be the gray. And you could see that 52%, 1 in every 2, said there's a great need for additional funds, and 28% said some need. So 8 in 10 feel that there's at least some need for additional funds. That's extremely high. And that tells me that they see the need, and they see that there's need for additional funds. The wrong track numbers tell me that there's definitely a need, and the financial question about do they need additional funds is quite hard, suggesting that you need more resources in order to do your job. I do want to point out that this question didn't say anything about a tax. For some people, in their mind, it could mean, you'll get more money from the state, or you'll get more money from the feds, or you'll change your budget to shift around money. But for others, they understood that there would be an additional tax. We're about to ask them about that. So specifically, the ballot measure. So I took half the sample randomly, and I put them in, I'll call it lane 1. Lane 1, they're going to hear in this survey that the TOT measure is going from 6% to 10%, which will generate approximately $400,000. Lane 2 will hear 6% to 12%, which will generate approximately $600,000. And so they only hear that question repeated several times, and that's their focus. What I didn't want to do is start sort of negotiating with them, well, should it be 10 or should it be 12? I wanted to get a clean read on the differences between 10% and 12%, and I'll show you both of them together and separately. So we read that ballot question you just saw, and then we asked, if there were an election today, would you vote yes in favor or no to oppose? If they said yes, we asked, is that definitely yes or probably yes? Because we want to know the intensity of how much they would really support it, or are they just soft on the support? If they said no, again, asked, is that definitely or probably no? Again, want to get a sense of the intensity of the opposition. And if they weren't sure on the initial ask, they said, well, I'm not clear, or I'm not decided. We pushed them and we said, would you lean yes or would you lean no? If they said they would lean yes, we put them in the yes camp. If they said they would lean no, we put them in the no camp. And 4% of the folks on the initial ask said, I still don't know. And they become the pure undecided. So this is how I would read it. The first panel is for the folks who heard the 6% to 10%. And they are going to keep hearing that 6% to 10% throughout the survey. And their initial vote is 70% yes, 27% no, and 4% undecided. But I'm really interested in this definitely and probably because they were willing to commit on the first question, whether they would vote yes or no. That's 65%. Now remember, there's two types of measures that you may want to consider. One is a general purpose measure, which is a 50+1 measure, and the other one is a dedicated measure, which is a 2/3 measure. That's up to you folks, but I think we can glean some information at the end, and I'll talk about that as to what might be successful. So while we see from 6 to 10 is 70% yes and 27% no, when we look at the folks who heard the 6% to 12%, they're at 68% yes and 29% no. Statistically, no difference between them. And so what I've done is I've combined the total to improve or to lower the margin of error on the right-hand side. So in principle, 69% are in favor of a potential ballot measure, with 65% saying definitely or probably. On the no side, you're about a little bit more than a quarter that say either definitely or probably or lean no. And you've got almost 2 in 10 that say definitely no. Typically, I find that 2 in 10, that 20%, is the floor that I normally see in most communities. So this doesn't concern me. It tells me that approximately 80% of your voters are in play for either a 50+1 or a 2/3 measure. The other thing I wanted to do is put it in context. So we looked at a November 2018 scenario. That would include approximately 20,504 voters. So on the yes side, we're looking at 14,148 voters. On the no side, and that you have to factor in the margin of error, but at least on the exact 69%. On the no side, it's 5,741 voters, and 615 voters are pure undecided. So it really puts it in context, like how big this potential measure will be relative to, let's say, a supervisorial race, where a lot smaller numbers of people would vote for any one election. And then what I wanted to do was show a couple of cross-tabulations. So what I did was I took anyone who said definitely or probably or lean yes, and I made them green. Anyone who said definitely, probably, or lean no, and I made them red. And then the grays are the pure undecided. And remember I showed you a question earlier about is there a great need, some need, little need, or no real need for additional funds? Well, I wanted to look at if they perceived they had great need, which was 52% of the sample, 73% would vote yes. If they thought you had some need, it's 75%. And if they thought you had little or no real need, which is 14% of the sample, they're at 44%. That tells me education is paramount in letting them know if you feel that there is a need for additional funds, educating them. You can never advocate, and I'll be mentioning that several times, but you can certainly educate, and you can certainly say what the needs are if you feel there is. The other demographic I wanted to show was by district, because I thought that would be important for you. And I'll just point out that the percentages at the bottom are the percentages that we estimate the likely turnout will be made up in each of the districts. So 19% of the overall turnout for Calaveras County will be in District 1, 18, 23, et cetera. And you could see that everyone is at or over 62%, with District 3 the strongest supporter. What you'll soon see when we re-ask the question later is that there's an important movement in District 1 that moves support up as well. So it's not exclusively a District 3, District 1. These are all relatively high numbers. But remember, we're focused on two different types of potential measures. One is a 50+1, and one is a 2/3 measure. We then introduced some features or services or infrastructure projects that could be funded by the measure, depending on how you folks write it. And we said, regardless of whether you support this measure or not, how important would it be to include these in the measure? And we gave them the option of extremely important, which is the dark greens, very important, which is the light green, the pink is somewhat important, and the red is not too important. And I've included the folks who said they didn't know in the red, because if it was important to them, they would tell us. And I've aggregated the extremely and very important on the right-hand side. So I have two slides. I have to tell you, there are some places, some geographies, be it a county or cities or school districts, where I come to them and I say, well, you have a small number of items that people think are really important. You have a large number of items that people think are very important, and that's good for you to know. What I find really interesting is that the voters' responses in terms of importance really mirror the county's perceptions of what's important too. So there's a nice link between how the county thinks and actually the voters think, and I think you have a good pulse on the priorities. So I just want to point out a few of the top ones. Maintaining emergency fire district response and protection. 88% said that was extremely or very important. And remember, I'm looking for a 50+1 or 2/3 all the time. With 6 in every 10 saying that's extremely important. Maintaining sheriff's patrols, 82%. Improving emergency fire district response and protection, 81%. Attracting and retaining businesses, 80%. And then we go into the sort of second tier, the 70s, which, again, in some jurisdictions is the top tier. In this case, it's just shy of the 80% mark, but still very important and still all above the 2/3 plus the 2/3 measure, potential measure. Becoming eligible for state and federal matching funds for road repair, helping prevent thefts and burglaries, all ranked high. On the bottom end of it is providing traffic flow and safety improvements. Only 53% said that's extremely or very important, with only 20% saying extremely important. Note that when we began, the intensities were 60, 45, 48, and now we're at 20. And then reinvesting in the tourism economy. Only about half say that's extremely or very important, with 16% saying extremely important. So from a business perspective, they look at the attracting and retaining businesses as a much more important a framing than the latter. We also try to isolate whether people thought it was important to maintain essential county services or improve essential county services. So at random, half the sample heard maintaining essential, and the other half heard improving essential. And you could see 78% say it's extremely or very important to maintain essential city services. 66% say extremely very important to improve. So that's a 12-point gap. So to me, the lead is the maintaining, but people still want improvements. But they just want, they want the services that they're accustomed to, and then they want you to improve. But they want you to guarantee the maintaining first. And then finally in this section, we asked about a couple of accountability provisions. I've been doing this close to 16 years. I've never seen a measure that successfully passed in my time without having some kind of accountability. Your voters want to know that someone's watching the way you spend the funds. And it's not unique to you, by the way. It's every government jurisdiction, regardless of what it is. So here we said requiring all funds used locally. 88%. That was among the highest items. They want, if you're going to raise this money, it's got to be here. You got to control it. The people here know what the needs are, and you got to spend it here. Now, many of you are saying, well, that's obvious. You know, if we pass this measure here, it is by law going to stay locally. People don't know that, and it's really, really important to communicate that. And the other thing is requiring audits. Here you have 6 in 10 who say that's important. Again, something that you typically do by law, but they're not aware of it. And it's important to remind them that you're required to do that. And then moving into the section, again, you're not allowed to advocate, but you are allowed to educate. And so we provided a series of statements that your county staff, and by the way, your county staff were amazing. I mean, the quality of the survey is so much better because of their cooperation and their contribution to the survey. So just wanted you to know that. Because I know a little bit of Calaveras County, and I know how to write a survey, and they know so much more. And the marriage was a good marriage. So we introduced some statements, we randomized them, and we said after each one, tell me if it would make you more inclined to vote yes on the measure. If they said it would, we said is that much more inclined, which is the dark green, or somewhat more inclined, which is the light green, and I've aggregated the total more inclined on the right-hand side. I will again remind you that I'm looking for 50 plus 1 or 2/3. And all of these exceed, on the second page as well, exceed the 2/3 measure. So this tells me you have a lot of very good reasons for this measure that your voters recognize. The problem is that when you have 6 statements that are very effective, you don't want to over-message. You really, if you're going to educate, you need to educate in unison. Because at the end of the day, you may go up to a constituent and say, well, how did you vote on this measure? And if they feel comfortable to tell you, they may say no, and you'll say, why? And they'll say, I didn't really know why I should be voting for it because I heard so many messages. So that's sort of a communications 101 that I would encourage the county to consider. So among the lead messages, of which, again, they were all fairly strong that I'm showing you, local control. And talking about how they're worried about the state has defunded you folks. You know, they put on mandates, but they don't fund them. And they want to make sure that the funds are used locally. So this is the second time in the survey that we've seen that local control is critical. And you could see 1 in every 2 say much more inclined to vote for the measure knowing this. Then patrols. At any one time, there are only 5 sheriff deputies on patrol on more than 900 miles of roads, and the average response time is 25 minutes. The measure would fund additional sheriff's patrols, improving response times, and keeping local residents safe, 75%. And the folks who heard the 6% to 10% heard this message of rate, in the sense that it was basically saying you're just keeping up with many of your neighboring counties in terms of the TOT percentage. And then accountability is important, that residents will not pay for this. It will only people who will be staying as guests or short-term rentals, local hotels, motels, and the like. And then an issue about roads also scores quite well, but intensity is at 40% for much more inclined. We were at 51% for the first 2 items. So after we give them additional information, we re-ask the ballot question that you saw earlier, because we want to see if education moves people at all, voters at all. So again, 2 lanes, right? These are the folks who only hear 6% to 10%. They started, and you saw this earlier when I just looked at the question after hearing ballot title and summary. We were at 70-27, yes, no. After information, you move up 6 points overall to 76%, and the no declines to 19%, and this is a very, very small, definitely no, in my experience. It's a very good number if one supports a measure, that's a good number to have. In terms of the definitely yes, we move up 15 points. And that's very considerable. You have almost 6 in 10 saying definitely yes after hearing information. This tells me that whatever you choose to do, if you choose to move forward, it's important to have public education. Again, not advocacy. That's something for the outside of the government, but in terms of education. You can legally permissible education. On the right-hand side are the folks who had heard the 6% to 12%. Again, just for hearing ballot title and summary, we started at 68% yes, 29% no, and after hearing the information that you just saw, we move up 68 to 73. It's 5 points. The intensity moves up 12 points from 45 to 57, and the no drops 6 points from 29 to 23. Again, statistically, there's no significant difference between the 10 and the 12% increase. And so what I've done again is combined the results. So I'll remind you the initial vote for all voters that were interviewed for a likely November 2018 election were 69% yes, 28% no, 3% undecided. That was only after hearing ballot title and summary. After education, overall, 6% move up in the total yes, and you've got 13% that move up in the definitely yes, and your definitely no is down to 15%. And then I thought it would be important to look at the different supervisorial districts, and this is how you read this chart. The first column are the supervisorial districts, which you're familiar with. The second column are the percentages of total yes on the initial vote combined for the just hearing ballot title and summary. After information, we re-ask the vote. These are the percentages of total yes in the third column. And these are the differences across the first and second ask of the ballot question. And you could see, I had promised you, 62 for District 1 was the lowest. After information, they move up 9 points. That's very large. And I'll remind you, we're only talking to them for a very short period of time, and they're the same people. And they didn't know that, they were going to this was what the survey was going to be about, or they took it online. So the education does clearly matter. And then the percentages on the right-hand side, again, are the percentages that each district will make up of a likely November 2018 election. So if we looked at you've seen this data before, but just sort of plotted in a different way, this is the 6% to 10%. You could see the total yes is in green, the total no is in red, and the undecided is in gray. You could see that the patterns, the shapes of the lines are very, very similar, and statistically not really a great difference between them. Now I go to the likely November 2018 electorate combined versus the likely November 2020 electorate, because you may want to decide not to go in 2018 and to go in an election where lower propensity voters are more likely to vote only in the presidential election than in other elections. And so the differences between a November 2018 election and a November 2020 election are virtually statistically not different. Frankly, this is surprising to me, because usually the November 2018 election, it's high propensity voters. They tend to be a little bit more fiscally conservative. They tend to be a little bit more 50 plus than 18 to 49. And usually we see it's a tougher lift in a gubernatorial non-presidential election year. And here there are really no differences between the two. So if you are considering this, obviously that's your decision. You have 2 elections. The only thing is, I can't guarantee what will happen. I can't guarantee what will happen tomorrow, but I definitely can't guarantee what will happen between 2018 and 2020. There's a lot of variables that will occur. We have a shorter time span in the 2018 cycle for there to be craziness or some kind of shock to the system. Though there could be. I can't guarantee that. So conclusions. A county TOT measure appears to be viable at the simple majority, with a good chance of attaining a supermajority support if backed by a legally permissible public education effort. It's much harder to get 2/3 than it is to get 50+1. Now, I know many of you folks are aware of the Business Roundtable initiative, and that if it was placed on the ballot and was successful, it would basically require that your measure be a two-thirds measure. Currently, while I'm not involved in the negotiations, I read in the newspaper like everyone else, that there's negotiations to try to take it off the November 2018 ballot. And so if that were the case, then you could easily go for a 50+1 or a two-thirds. Two-thirds is always a harder to obtain than a 50+1 for obvious reasons. There appears to be no statistically significant difference in support for the increase in the county TOT at the 10% and the 12%. Raising it to 12% should be considered, but again, it's in your hands to decide whether that's a smart move to do. There's no statistical difference in support of the measure for the 2018 general election compared to the 2020. Either election is viable at this time, but I'll remind you that this survey is purely a cross-sectional. It's at one point in time. This is how they felt on the day we interviewed them. Maintaining and improving fire response and sheriff patrols, attracting and retaining businesses are among the services and infrastructure projects considered extremely and very important to include. So even if you don't use this survey to decide on moving forward with a measure, you have really important information just in general in terms of how you set policy, in terms of how your voters prioritize things in the county, which is always good to have. I always encourage my clients to take the survey and milk it for as much as they can on a whole variety of things. And then finally, local control, providing additional sheriff's patrol to improve response times, and putting the county's TOT in line with neighboring counties, that would be at the 10%, are among a list of strong reasons why high percentages of voters would be more inclined to vote yes on the measure. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Board questions? Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Thank you for putting this together in such a good package. A question that I have is that, again, your sample size was 900?
Yeah, the overall sample size, which included 2020 electorate, was 1,040. And the sample size for the November 2018 was 914. And I have to tell you that we thought we might be able to get 500 at best from this. And it speaks to how engaged your voters are about the issues here, that we were able to get so much more. So, yes, so that's the answer.
I draw a comparison. There are many counties in California in the primary election that didn't achieve 25% turnout.
I know.
So we do pride ourselves in being able to have our voters engaged. The question is, do you know of any counties that recently passed a TOT change from?
Yeah, I know some. I don't have the list here. I know there were about 8 to 10 TOT changes, maybe 1 or 2 counties, mostly cities.
There were a lot of cities. I was just saying, on the ballot for this
Yes.
last general, I think there was about 8.
Yeah, and you will see, because, well, we're doing many, but other firms are as well, you'll see many TOT efforts in November as well.
It's interesting that with the responses, it's almost as though the voters are looking for us to change the TOT pie breakdown, that they're wanting funds allocated in a different direction than maybe we have been doing in the past.
You know, it's interesting.
I'm just sensing that.
Yeah. Should I comment on that, or was that?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure.
Please.
So, you know, I look at I'm going to assume you mean slide 3, which is the right direction, wrong track. I look at these, and sometimes, if it's in the wrong direction, they're not voting for a measure because they're just not happy with what's going on in county government. In this case, they think things are on the wrong direction, but they think you need more funds in order to get it on the right direction. And that speaks, I believe, to how well this county is run. Because I would come in and tell you, like, they're concerned, and they're not going to give you money if that were the case. I'm not shy about that. You don't pay me to be shy about that. And so here, they clearly see that there's a budget deficit. I don't mean in the traditional sense of the word, but in the sense that you don't have enough funds to support the services that they want.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Sir, this is an excellent, excellent project. I found this very informative, not only as a supervisor, but as a resident of this county. I see our goal, and I'm very encouraged by this information. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I do have a question. When you, these 914 voters, I didn't see a percentage of those 914 from each district.
Yeah, okay, I'll show it to you. So at the bottom, or the percentage?
So of the 914, 19%? The answers came from
That's
District
right.
1? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that those were the likely turnout.
They are. So it's both.
Okay,
I mean,
so-
I
okay.
weighted
Thank you
it
for
to both to
clarifying.
make sure. It's really important that I try to replicate a potential turnout. Now, there are things that may happen that are out of our control, but we use past voter history and people who have registered since the November 2016 election as a marker to determine whether they're likely to vote. So that's what we do. And
Yeah,
so,
it's going to tell you that. If
Yeah.
you went through each district voting rolls, it's going to tell you that
Yep.
information. Yeah.
Yep.
That's why I was asking about it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
At this time, we'll open it up to public comments.
Bill Wilson, District 1. Well, this is a very good study. Too bad it couldn't have been done on another issue that we have, a $13 million tax that was paid that, but we're going to make, what, 400,000, 600,000? That'll make up that $13 million, $9.2 million structural deficit that we have. So, yeah, I think this is just great. Too bad it wasn't done. I know there was a question on here. Do you think that the supervisors would be responsible and that the $13 million was worthwhile? I don't see any response on that. I guess I got lost out in the survey. At least the one I took had a question about it. Again, yeah, let's tax anybody that comes into the county. Let's not support businesses. We closed 500 of those with a ban. I don't know, folks. Yeah, we don't have enough rooms here to keep people occupied. But somebody mentioned to me that, they're just not really going to pay this tax. Granted, we'll pass it. Granted, we should increase, but it'll just be moved around and we'll make different room rates and we'll do different things. We won't have to charge this tax to these people that are coming in the county. But good luck with that, guys. I think that was a great project, a great way to spend our tax dollars on this project. Too bad you couldn't do that for a project that would have given us $13 million plus a year.
Ben Stopper, District 5. I found the survey very enlightening on multiple issues. A percentage of the voters feeling that the county is going in possibly not the best direction, so on and so forth. Something I want to address is local control. And I brought this up during the meeting when you were hiring this gentleman to run the survey. Me, as a voter, I like to know when you raise taxes. Now, this one doesn't necessarily affect me as much unless I go stay up in Murphy's for the night when I go to Ironstone. But I like to know where my tax dollars are going. Because we have issues like with us paying into the Delta College Fund and it not being used here, and paying for a college in Mountain House. We need to provide some clarity to the voters, and I think this would probably take the 66% vote. But my personal opinion is the direction that he's talking about is he's correct. People predominantly support this, and if you look at the voting on Measure A, which isn't exactly the same thing, but that just won overwhelmingly and would have taken a 66 vote. I want, personally, and I know a lot of constituents think the same way as I do, is we want a certain percentage of the money, and we want to see it going to where we voted for it to go to. At the same time, we don't want you to say, okay, we put that $300,000, let's say, into the fire departments. Now we're just going to take this money away from over here. So maybe there should be a stipulation in there that says, yes, we'll put this towards those certain services without reducing the other money coming from other areas. So there's no smoke and mirrors behind it too. Look, the accountability and the local control is very important when it comes to my voting on an issue like this. Thank you.
Allen Taxpayer Association. I don't think there's an association for the taxpayers that are going to be taxed because of this. So I'm going to try to do my best to represent them as well. Every dollar that's taken by taxes from the people that come to our county is one less dollar they get to spend in our county. They spend money in our county. When that money's spent, it does a number of things. It actually increases taxes because there's a sales tax that's collected if they buy products. If they buy a home, quite often the price goes up, and there's an increase in property tax, which goes to the county. Also, it'd be good, this survey is well put together, and particularly some parts of it are very interesting, having to do with people's perception of how government is functioning. And many people are not aware that such perception exists. It seems like if this study were modified to be more balanced, to interview the people that have the hotels and motels, there might be an association, a lodging association. Find out if they don't agree with it, with increasing the TOT tax, what are the reasons for not? What are they afraid of losing business? Having less people come in by a certain percentage? What would be a balanced approach to this? And then it's certainly true, if you use a survey to educate, you'll change the results of the survey, without a doubt. But it's that educational part of it that's so important to be balanced. If you're just talking about the benefits you can get by more tax money, well, it's pretty hard for people not knowing they could be on downside to say no. Well, that would increase the number of people that would say yes. And so, in conclusion, I think that there should be more balance to the study. It should be not just to find ways to increase taxes, but also to give a balanced approach, find out what is the downside in doing this method. Thank you.
Hold on. He was in line. George was in line.
Oh, poor George. Yeah, lined up back there. George Fry, I'm very impressed with your study. I do have a suggestion. If you haven't already done it, I would suggest that you talk to Dr. Randy Smart on the Measure A that passed with 88%. Their advertising program for that ballot measure was second to none. I mean, every time I was on Facebook, there were ads over and over and over again. I think one of the most important things in a rural county, because it's smaller population, that transparency has got to be absolutely there. 100% transparency. I also support the local control. If we don't have control over what's going on with our tax dollars, we're in trouble. So I once again would like to thank you for the presentation that you made. It's outstanding. The numbers are quite clear. I think the toughest thing you're going to have to do, and I don't need to tell you, you already know it, is educating the voters. I want to say that it's too bad in this country we don't have people that are voting on ballot measures or what have you that are not educated. If we could get them to read the measures and pass a test, then they could vote. I know that that's maybe off the wall, but I'm just so tired of seeing, I'm 72 going on 40, and I'm so tired of seeing ignorant people voting. It's just, if you don't educate them, it's not going to change. They've already been down that road twice. So once again, thank you for your presentation.
I'm Jessica Clough. I'm from District 1. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was a lot of really helpful information. I do think education in the public and the community is huge in order for people to speak up and talk about and be represented in ways that they like. People need to know about what people feel and what people like. I kind of have an idea, a suggestion that I really would like to be considered. The county is looking for more revenue, whether we're going to raise taxes or whatnot, to fulfill holes that have been created. Measure C passed overwhelmingly, saying that the people wanted a cannabis tax. What if we took part of our cannabis tax from an industry that could be well regulated and refunded it to the people? Property owners could get a refund either from a property tax or it could be a federal return. This could...
Let her speak, please.
Yeah.
Or continue.
Thank you. This could help return the funds. Once again, like was mentioned before, taxes being returned to the people keeps money here locally. An income stream from an industry that we already know can create much revenue by being able to returning, we would want this tax to come to the people and to go to the people. So by being able to return a small bit of tax to all the property owners, it may help them with any issues that they may be having with their neighbors, or if it may help the lower income here in the area can actually benefit from having an industry that is able to profit and support the people. I feel like it's being overlooked. I feel like it was a very large revenue stream, and by being open-minded and looking at different ways that this revenue stream can, one, even be returned back to the people who live here, and possibly help to improve more of the local issues that we're having, the community issues, with reasonable regulation that could resolve many of the issues that we're seeing here as far as the need for an income stream or questioning whether to raise taxes in these other ways that we already know are damaging and hitting people that are already in a very poor state right now or struggling. We know that our county is struggling between the fire and between all other kind of issues that we've been dealing with. I didn't come forth just to talk about cannabis, but it's hard not to acknowledge a large revenue stream that this county could take and could help. If the board doesn't want the revenue stream, I feel like the people have already spoken up and say that they do. So how can we take this revenue stream to benefit everyone? Thank you.
Lisa Bolton, Calaveras Visitors Bureau. So I have heard the argument that Al made many times about how people, when they come to a destination with a higher TOT, they will spend less money. Well, that would mean that with our 6% TOT, our visitors are spending disproportionately more once they're in destination than in other neighboring counties, and that's just not the case. So logically, that argument doesn't work, even though you would think that it might. So my other point was that raising the TOT does not result in lower visitation to a county, generally because a percentage is given back to tourism marketing, which generates increased occupancy rates for the lodging properties that are being taxed, that are collecting that tax, I should say. So in fact, when Angels Camp's TOT was raised from 6% to 10%, occupancy rates increased. So there just is no basis. In fact, there are no studies that show that increasing the TOT is going to lower occupancy for lodging in the county. Thanks.
Hello, Board. Trevor Whitkey. Very interesting study. Good to have some actual data for where the county's standing right now. It's very interesting that 28% of the county thinks that we're going in the right direction. 24% of the electorate voted for Ed Langen. 28% of the electorate voted for Gary Stevens. 30% of the electorate voted for Clyde Clapp. 30% of the electorate thinks that we're going in the right direction. It seems like only 30% of the electorate agrees with the ban proposal and thinks that the decisions made by this board have been sound decisions based on this polling information. 70% of the population voted for Measure C. 70% of the population thinks the county's going in the wrong direction. You do the math. There's a perception that 80% of the county holds that the county needs new revenue. This board is looking to increase its revenue by $400,000 to $600,000. This board just cut $13 million in revenue out of its budget. This does not seem to be like very good math or very good budgeting on the part of this board, nor does it appear to be very good politics. You guys don't seem to understand where the electorate is. The electorate does not support the decisions of this board. They do not support the direction this board has taken. And they have clearly said that. They've said it in this poll, and they said it on June 6th when they went to the polls and confirmed exactly what this data shows. So, as we move forward and as this potential tax gets placed on the ballot, we'll see how the voters vote. I believe that there is support for increasing revenue. I think that the voters would love to have more money in the county. It was recently said in an email on February 28th, Dennis Mills was CC'd in this email, and it says, as for the taxes, the money paid for the pot farms was not needed by the county, law enforcement, or for its operations.
Mr. Whitkey, we need to be on target, and that's TOT tax.
Yes, and this is about that. We're talking about the TOT tax, and we're talking about the need for revenues, and that is on topic. If you would let me finish, as opposed to interrupting me, I would actually make my point.
You need to stay on topic.
I am staying on topic, sir. Can I please have my 15 seconds back?
Yes, you can have your 15 seconds, but you need to stay on topic.
Okay, thank you kindly. It has been said that the majority of the money that has been that is maintained in the cash carry is not from higher pot tax revenues, but is from non-pot revenue sources such as the TOT. This is a false statement. It is very clear that increasing the budget by $400,000 to $600,000 vis-a-vis this TOT tax won't fill the gap.
I would like to address what Ben Stopper said about tracking, the public being able to track where money goes. When the sheriff's department is budgeted a certain amount of money and they give $800,000 back into the budget, I have a problem with that. I don't know how that relates to this, but it does somehow. Thank you.
I'd like to just speak as one who
just booked his vacation for the fall. And as I said, when I booked that, I looked at rooms and where I wanted to go. I looked at what, I was going to be able to get for my money. I didn't look at what the TOT tax was. It's what I can afford. But it does bother me that I am paying probably 12% to another county, and our county is only charging 6%. I think that it's only right to get up to what other counties in our area are charging, and I don't think that's going to stop people from coming here. What's going to get people to come here is, in addition to doing wonderful presentations like this, we need some presentations done on how we can attract more people to our county. This is a wonderful county. We have some really beautiful natural wonders here that people come to see, but we don't hear much talk about those anymore. All we hear about is one industry in this county, which isn't drawing tourists in. If anything, I would say that it's probably keeping people out. I know some that don't want to come here because they don't like the smell of the county. But we need to promote our county, and we need to promote the natural, beautiful resources we have here and get people to come in. If we're going to raise the TOT tax, let's also use some of that money to promote the county and then increase the tourist business here, because we do have a wonderful county to offer to people. It's a beautiful place to come, a lot of great things to see here, and very much appreciate the presentation. And to be honest, I was a little shocked. I didn't think TOT tax had a chance. But it was good to see that that does have a chance to pass, and I think that would be a real asset to this county to help us out. And again, you're going to visit any other county, you're paying a lot more. To me, it's only fair, and to me, it's one of the fair taxes, because it's, if you don't want to pay it, don't come and visit. If you don't want to pay it in another county, don't go visit them. Those are fair taxes. So, appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
I saw on TV the other night an industry. Huh?
Hang on, let her finish, please. Let her finish. Bonnie, continue.
I saw on TV another night an industry related to the TOT, and it was an industry called Bud and Breakfast, where they have cannabis farms that allow people to come and stay, and they 1 to 3 nights, I believe, and as far as the TOT tax goes, I don't think those people would mind paying 10, 12, 15% TOT tax. I'm really in favor of increasing it, and just as the gentleman before me spoke, it's equivalent to what other counties are charging. So why are we behind what other counties are charging? And with the information presented in this survey, apparently most people in the county don't mind moving their TOT tax up to what's equivalent to other counties. So anyway, think of a bud and breakfast industry.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close public comment period. This was an informational item only, so thank you.
Can I add one
Sure.
thing, Chair? And I apologize. The question that I would have, this is an information item. What I would ask is if we can do an informal poll at this point based on what we see. And again, I know we can't get into deliberation necessarily. We can do that when it does come back. But from the direction at this point, what I would be looking for is, 1, shall we proceed with a November ballot measure, and 2, whether we set it at the 10 or a 12%, what the board would generally like to see come back to them for action.
You understand the question?
I do. I'd like to see it on the ballot for November, and I'd like to see it at 12%.
Supervisor Mills?
I would be inclined.
You need to turn your microphone.
I'd be inclined toward 10% on the ballot in November.
Supervisor Oliveira?
I would be in agreement with a 10%, correction, 12% after the great presentation. Providing that we continue our meetings on the top committees to establish an educational program, we don't want that to fall between the cracks. And I think it'd be very supportive of our public services and our folks over at the Visitors Bureau. It's a very wise way to go right now. Thank you.
Supervisor Garamendi?
November 12%. Sorry. November 12%.
And I'm going to follow with the path of the committee, their recommendation of November at 12%.
So just so I have it clear, I have 2 10s and 3 12s, so we would bring back a 12% at this point.
No, you have 4 12s and 10.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I thought I heard Supervisor Mills say 10. My
He did,
apologies.
and the other 4 said.
Okay. But that's the one that I missed. Perfect.
All right. Okay, thank you so much, and we will be in recess till 2 o'clock.